better questions.
Right.
All right, guys, we'll do that. All right, running a small tournament. So we're going to talk about three concepts, basically. Why this is an important concept, why this is important to our communities, whether it be heavy or light. My husband's a mod and a Don, has been for 30 years, but I've run chivalric tournaments as well, and we were very heavily involved in the tournament of Leoness from Bjornsborg, so have a lot of experience with that. So it is from both sides. I'm going to try to make sure I cover both ideas. I'm going to talk to you about general formats you can use, and I've done little charts for you. Sometimes you have to sell your Baron, Baroness, your populace on doing something different. So I've tried to put together some quick charts that you could print out and say, okay, here's how you do it, here's what generally happens, and here's your winning condition. So it'll make it a little easier to present to your barons, baronesses, and populace and your officers when you try to do these. And then I'm going to talk briefly how to kind of kid yourself out to run a tournament, some best practices, and a couple of things I've learned about running for kids that's a little bit different. Okay? All right, so what am I calling a small tournament? Our definition we're going to work with for small tournament is 10 or fewer fighters. You run into this, typically shires and cantons run this a lot. And when you have kids lists, you usually don't have more than 10 fighters. I'm not sure we had more than 10 at even the 40th year. So the largest group we've ever had at Queens for Rapier, it's been 14. So still pretty small. So why are they important? We want to give, one of the things we've noticed with our fighters is there's a dropout factor. At some point, there are people that get frustrated because they're not achieving anything, and they have a tendency to drop out of fighting. And unfortunately, that part of the community thinks, okay, that's good, they couldn't hack it, they need to drop out. Another half of the community doesn't agree with that. So it's nice to have some balance to show people that, there are other ways to succeed and win. And you can actually encourage your local fighters. So this will help your newer fighters start their journey. I always encourage people to go to small tournaments because it gives them a chance. You won't get as many fights, but it gives you a chance not to only be with the elite people who are focused that day on Crown or King's Champion or Queen's Champion, where it is high pressure and high desire to win. So that is very important, and it builds community. When you go to a smaller tournament, you tend to meet all the fighters. I certainly don't know every fighter that shows up at Queens. I try, but there's no way I can do that because we've usually got 1,500 people. And by going to smaller tournaments, it allows you to work with people maybe you don't see, and it allows you to meet new people. And I'm going to show you how we can do some community building with some small tournaments outside of your fighting communities. All right. So these are the things you need to keep in mind when you're running a small tournament. Well, actually, when you're running most any tournament, communication is key. The worst thing can happen is somebody show up, you do the tournament, and then you do something that is odd or different to determine the winner. So those very competitive people who thought you were going to get a grid and they were going to get points, tell them up front what the winning condition is. We had a tournament in Stargate back, oh gosh, probably before 2010, where it was scenario based, but nobody told anybody how they were going to point it, how anybody was going to win or lose, and the end person was just somebody they picked. And it was like, okay, if you don't know what you're working towards, you're not going to work towards it. There's nothing to do. Like I said, you don't have to have a statistical winner. Don't run tournaments in a vacuum. One of the things that is a problem with some tournaments is if you go off in the corner and run it where no one sees it, people come to watch tournaments. This is how people learn before they start tournaments. Don't go find a quiet corner and just run something in a vacuum. I know it's unfortunate for archery has to do a lot of that for safety, but it's good even with your archery to tell people we're opening up the range, come watch, and not try to not schedule things over them so people can go over and participate in that. Always have a goal in mind and stay on your message. So if your goal is to encourage new fighters, make sure you kind of have a little bit of a marketing plan to kind of get to where you want people to be and get them in the right mindset. Also, make sure that you're not going to the ridiculous, another Stargate tournament, where somebody decided for their championship tournament they were going to do scenes from Rocky Horror Picture Show. So thank goodness this person moved to Brindalad. But we had a lot of really upset people because it seemed in their minds to be disrespectful because this was a baronial championship. Oh. Now, if it's your Yule Revel tournament, we do a silly theme every year for our Yule Revel. I think we did Die Hard, and Master Craig, our Baron, dressed up like Hans from Die Hard with a wig, a walking rock, and a plastic gun, a green plastic gun, green and orange. But we always do something silly and do stockings and stuff like that. That's okay. You could do Rocky Horror Picture Show but don't do it for your championship. People are going to be insulted. There's no way to get that as a winner. Safety first. Example. At BAM this last year, back in 2019, Master Miles scaled the outside of the castle, jumped over the battlements, and killed several of his opponents. It was completely awesome and immediately was outlawed because it's not safe to do that. We're not all 20 in our early 20s and work out all the time, so certainly I wouldn't have been able to do that. But if you've got something you want to do that's creative, it's very simple to just call your marshal, call your Knights Marshal, call the regional, call the up chain, call Kingdom, and bounce your idea off if you know it's something new. That way, when in doubt, everyone knows that we're being safe and it's within the rules. And the ultimate goal of a tournament is to have fun. If you're not providing a way for people to have fun, then why are you doing this? All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the formats. We're going to start with the obvious ones that everybody runs for small tournaments and talk about some ways to work with them. So the most typical one when you end up with a small tournament is a Swiss 5. The fighters will all have at least 5 fights. That gives you a nice view around. So if you have 5 fighters, they have 5 fights. That's a lot of fighting. You can, traditionally, you change weapon styles in each fight. You don't have to, but you can. And after 5 fights, you can decide to do a single or double elimination to get to a statistical winner if that is a requirement for like a baronial championship or something that you couldn't sell. Or you can do it by vote acclaim. You can do it by nobles pick. It's really wide open how you decide you want to have a winner. Or you can decide you don't have a winner. You may do it with little melee teams and just have a fun day. Round robin, the dreaded round robin. Everyone fights everyone else, mostly, in a round robin tournament. It is difficult to keep track of. The instructions are in the back. We all hate them. And as Nikkei said, always have cheat sheets. I have a kind of a plastic clipboard that I keep my cards, and I have pasted inside the lid the typical round robin format. So I just number the cards and follow the chart. I don't know how you do it otherwise, because I'm sure I completely did it wrong the first time I did it without it. It can be done as a full tournament or half round robin and stop after a certain number of rounds. So we typically run a round robin for Queen's Hope. We notice that the youngest kids kind of lose interest after the second round. So we typically let them fight a couple of rounds, make sure they get seen by the queen, and then let them go off and play. And then we usually do some additional things with the older kids so they can get some more fighting in. Winner is by the most wins, or you can do a runoff for the final with double a limb if you want. Bear pit. This is one where fighters line up in a line. You draw lots or cast die, determine who starts. Challengers can fight the first fighter or the bear until that fighter loses. And then the fighter that defeats becomes the new bear. You can scale this very well. So if you are in a situation where you're thinking you may have 10 people, you may have 200 people, you just really don't know, this is a very good scenario. One thing you can do to keep it from being too long, if you have end up with a lot of people, is to cut it like 5. So we get somebody like Jason at the front of the line of the bear pit, and he might be able to take 15 people out, and that's not going to make everybody have a lot of fun. So after he kills 5 people, he goes to the back of the line and you just switch out. That makes it a little easier for everybody. And the idea is to make sure everybody stands in line and talks to each other and gets to know each other and actually get some fights in too. Winners typically number of fights won, and you can typically get a statistical winner out of this. You can divide it as well and do multiple bear pits. You could have like 3 or 4 going at once. And this is very good for a very large tournament for that reason. The scenario tournament. So one thing that we haven't been doing a whole lot of in the last few years is the traditional pot arm tournament. And the traditional pot arm tournament is a scenario-based tournament. The fighters will fight in several scenarios. There is a winning condition that's usually announced ahead of time, and the winner is usually picked by acclaim. So one of the things that we worked on, Etienne and I worked on for a very long time, was the Tournament of Lyonesse. So it was a Arthurian theme. We had 4 fields. Each one was an Arthurian kind of icon, an animal that's talked about. So we had bears, dragons, hawks, and stags. So everyone was divided into 4 fields, and the fields kind of fought each other. And what we did is we picked knights, nobles, pelicans, laurels, to kind of watch the fights, and they were kind of secret judges. So the idea was to kind of exceed yourself that day. If you did something really cool, you would get points. And then we'd sit in the pavilion after it's over and decide who ultimately won. And there were 10 or so people announced to the winners of Lyonesse, and you got a medallion. And it was very well attended. Everybody had a great time because they got to do some things they don't normally do. We did what they call a tournament au cheval, where you pretend you're on a horse, and some people brought a stick horse, and they had a blast. We did a crest tournament, a medieval style crest tournament. I remember Sir Corey had a working Dutch windmill on his head. He put a motor in it, and it spun while he was playing. It took a while to get it knocked off his head too. It was a lot of fun. But scenario tournaments can be really good for trying new and different things, and it can reinvigorate somebody who's been kind of in a tournament season grind. So it's nice to do things like this in an off season. And the winning condition is wide open. Another thing that we do in down here in the coast is Squires, Cadets, Arcarius, where the scenarios are not all fighting. You fight in a tournament, you play chess, you have to dance, you have to do Bardic, you have to do ANS, and there's a heraldry test. So there's a winner in each of the 6 categories and an overall winner. With a person who does the best amount of points in each. It's kind of complicated how they score it. I've actually not done the scoring for it, but like I said, you don't have to actually make them all fight. So, and I've also seen this done in teams as well, where they had to do several things as a team. All right, the line tournament. This is really good when you have very, very few fighters. Line up your fighters. It's typically best to seed them where you have the best to the most experienced to the least experienced. I wouldn't necessarily say worst to least, but you kind of know where people fall in that usually. The most experienced fighter typically fights everyone down the line and retires, and you do it as a line and let people retire out as they fought everyone else. And you repeat it until you're out of fighters, and you can decide how you want to score it, or you can score it on points. The token tournament. So this one allows and gives advantages to the newer fighters. So for instance, I originally did this one as a rapier scenario at one point, and I'm not sure if we did this at war or if this was something we did at a tournament. But what you did is new fighters got 4 tokens. The cadets got 3, the dons got 2, and the mods got 1. And the idea was if you lost, you had to give away one of your tokens. And the winner was the person with the most tokens. So that way, because you handicap your better fighters, it gives you a little better chance to have someone who is going to exceed themselves that day and work very hard to get there, because you're not going to necessarily beat that Duke, but you can probably get quite a few tokens if you start as a new fighter and earn them. So this is easy to do. I think what we used was little glass beads like you use for gaming, or you put in a vase. I had a bag of them, and we just used that. Made it very easy. You could even do some that are theme, made to a theme if you want to as well. All right, a voting challenge. So one thing that we don't do a lot of anymore is have a viewing gallery. So you set up a viewing gallery for a typical, you could have just populace, you could have nobles, you could have lions, you could have laurels, it doesn't matter. And one of the nice things about pulling an outside group in to be that viewing source is this gives the fighters a chance to present themselves to people they don't normally interact with. You know, like I said, there are 50 fighters at Queens, and I know most of them. But I don't know everyone who's a knight. I don't know everyone who's a pelican. I don't even know everyone who's a laurel, and I am one. So being able to interact with people you don't normally deal with gives you a little bit of community spread. Fighters just do challenges. Let them pick who they want to fight and fight until they stop. This is good for a small group because it will actually allow them to fight until they're done. Everybody's happy because they fought as much as they want and they go home happy. You can have this gallery vote on who was the most fun fight. So it becomes more of a presentation than just a fight. So you can do, you know, banter, like so-and-so is, I'm dueling so-and-so, or so-and-so knight is from this village and, you know, I've got this problem with him, you know, make something of it. It could be fun. Play acting is always fun. And it gives people a chance to explore their personas as well through that. Winners, who has the most votes.
Canton of Glasgow is the only one I know that actually does that. They have the Women of Glasgow as their gallery. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know that there was one that was done a long time ago called Ladies Tournament of Chivalry, where they had a ladies gallery. It was done kind of a 15th, yeah, it was a 15th century theme. And at the very end, they had flowers, and we had a ladies' battle of flowers where everybody threw roses, kind of like a carnation dodgeball. It was a blast. If you got somebody's hat off, it was even better, especially with those hennons. And this one is more, this is a gallery. The vote can just be anybody. This is the one that's more specific to lords, ladies, nobles. So I split them out in case you have one concept over the other you want to talk to your people about. A peer tournament. This is basically the same as the Rose tournament that we run at Gulf War. You sponsor a fighter. One of the nice things to do is if you use a peerage that is not normally connected to what you do, it allows them to meet new people and actually have people reach out to new people. So you could have a tournament where you have to get a lion to sponsor you. So that means you have to find a lion and ask them, you know, can I sponsor you? Usually when you do this, there's hospitality involved. That way the person can get to know a new noble, peer, knight, etc., and actually reach out to other parts of the community. And we talked about one time, and we may still do this, about doing a mods sponsor chivalric, and mods and dons sponsor the ship fighters, and the ship fighters sponsor the rapier fighters. So there would be a afternoon and a morning and just swap. So we'd have a little more cross community, because since my husband's been a rapier fighter for 30 years and I have a son who wants to fight Shiv, I don't know any of the Shiv fighters hardly. So it's good to help. Yes, there is a kids tournament where peers sponsor kids. Yeah, I love to get sponsor tournaments for kids because it helps them meet people who are new role models. I do try to keep it within, you know, for the kids, within the people who are background checked, just to make sure. And I generally know who that is, since Etienne was the marshal. Fighters run a series of scenarios a lot of times with these, and you can do points, you can do votes, or you can just not have a winner. Everybody fights. It's great for the kids not to actually have a winner, because it's good to have that pure line noble rose knight give them largesse for the good behavior that they've done. Oh, that's great. The kids have a token creating project. That is great. And bragging rights, yes. One of the nice things about that is, you know, they now have seen a different aspect of the STA. It's something I didn't do with my 20-year-old son when he was a kid. I didn't get him outside the rapier community very often. And so he's just not into the Three Musketeers. He is totally about the Lord of the Rings and the Longsword. So I missed an opportunity there. Fight for lack of a better term. You get a group of elite fighters, dons, mods, knights, and you have a fighter fight a group of them. So this is something that we try to do every Queens for the Queen's Hope. If we have very few older kids, we have a lot of kids in the program that do epee and light steel and plastic, but we only have a few that do heavy steel. And we have two Queen's Hope champions, a high junior and a senior division, so to speak. So one of the things that I've made sure we do is when we have those fighters, they fight a don or mod. And I usually recruit 5 mods or dons. I know Orlando's done it for me several times. and they fight one of the kids. And one of the things I try to do here is I had Orlando fight Evan, who was our Baron's son, because he's not going to spend a lot of time with the people up north. And that gives him someone else and a different perspective on how the game is played. And we'll also got some very good advice on his fighting. I make sure that the Dons or Mod sits down with the kid afterwards and gives them, some encouragement and tells them what would be good for them to work on next. And I kind of have a list in the back of my mind who's good at that. So it works very well for youth. I hope that people can pick this up and do Fight the Knight for the King's Dream, because I think that would be very, very beneficial. Partner tournament. So Ravensfort did one of these, and I have not seen this done, but this one time. But it was really a neat concept. You were a team, and everyone was a team of each discipline. You had one artist, one chivalric fighter, one rapier fighter, one archer, one youth fighter, etc. And they were a cohesive team. And each person would participate in their event, and the winner was the team that did the best overall in all around in all the different contests. It was a lot of fun to see people, kind of cheer on another person doing another thing. The Valhalla Melee. Now, this one can be a lot of fun, especially for new fighters. So what you do is, this is a melee where you're doing single fights. You have a big open field and everyone fights for themselves. It's not teams of 2 or 3. When you're killed, you leave the field. However, if the person that kills you dies, you are automatically resurrected and you get to rejoin the field. So it allows you to get off, take a break, jump back in, fight some more, get killed, take a break, jump back in, and you fight until one person is standing or you're tired of watching it. Sometimes you get tired of watching it before you get tired of get an actually clear winner, but you will know when everybody's starting to kind of like lose their attention. Or you can do everyone wins for this one too. All right, so those are the general scalable tournament types. Of course, we can always run single and double a limb, and I do have the instructions for doing that effectively at the back of the presentation in case you have never run any tournament at all. So you can kind of do the comparison, and there are charts for it as well. Do we have any questions or any other ideas for formats? All right. And that is a good, Ivo, that's a very good comment you had about heralding. For the kids, I always make sure I get really good heralds, and I always put them at the front list fields. So if there's 4, 2 by the crown and 2 in the back, they always find the 2 in the front. Or I put them all on one field so they can definitely get seen. But the kids love to get introduced and accoladed, and the dread, fighter, they love it. They eat it up. All right, so methods. I keep a box when I go to an event, and I think I'm going to have to run a tournament. I keep Sharpie markers because I have used non-Sharpie markers. I had nice Crayola ones. Guess what? It was 100% humidity, and my cards bled where I couldn't read them. So from now on, Sharpie markers, they don't bleed. They're rainproof. Index cards, I keep several colors because for kids, I typically have to run more than one list at a time, so it keeps me organized. I keep little bean bags in my box for windy days because spring queens, everything blows off the table. I do keep tokens in my box if we decide, okay, well, we've got this amount of people, let's have a token tournament. I have the tokens there. I keep like 50 little beads or in a little pouch. It's very easy to do. And I did this one time, and I will never do it again, which is I did not have note paper to write down for the queen who was in the tournament and who was best, and that was so silly. So I always have note paper and pens. Now, if you run for kids, a lot of the kids tournaments we do, we like to have letters of intent, because we do like the roses tournament that we usually do at Steps for the kids. The roses really like to be able to sign the kids' letters with calligraphy markers. So I make sure I have those. I keep tan looking, like parchment looking paper for them in case, because you will have 15, 20 kids in a tournament, and 2 of them will have remembered their sponsor and their letter of intent. So they all have to do it on site. So it's always good. I also have a lot of siblings that don't fight that want to help list mistress. This is sometimes not very helpful. So I always make sure that I keep crayons from like restaurants and things like that, the little ones, and some coloring sheets for the board helpers, and for board fighters. Between rounds, the little ones will want to crowd around the table and talk to Old Lady Bia, and Old Lady Bia is trying to run the tournament. So they get to color purple Pegasuses for me till they, can't do it anymore. And always have largesse for your fighters, because you will always see awesome things this is even good for the adults. You will see a new fighter do something awesome and exceed themselves. And you can easily, as another fighter, or even as just a lord or lady, say, you really encouraged me with what you did today. I really liked the way you honorably handled that fight. Or, with the kids, we're trying to make sure to always reward very good behavior, because some of them can be a little aggressive. And when they don't jump and do jumping jacks through their entire fight, which I've had happen before, they get a largesse. So yeah, so encouraging the good behavior, when they get presents, they kind of tend to remember. And that even works for adults too. When I do corporate training, I always have candy when I ask questions, because it's amazing what 50-year-old sales reps will do for dumb suckers. It's crazy. They will answer questions and they will fight each other over them. They revert. So, all right. So, questions, comments, anything you have that's something you want to think about, or any suggestions, anything you want to ask?
I had a question.
Sure.
I know you said 10 was about your number, and I'd agree. As a career list herald, I absolutely think that's a small list. Where would you feel the line exists where the techniques you're talking about don't scale? I mean, I would try some of these on, say, 15 warm bodies or 16, but 20, 30?
I would say once you hit 25, some of these are not going to work. Once you hit 25 fighter, once you hit over 10 fighters, you're not going to do a round robin. That exceeds, anybody's ability to keep track of, and usually makes the tournament too long. So the bear pit, you just divide it up into pits. If you have 100 fighters show up when you thought you were going to have 10, you can just divide it into separate pits. So most everything except for the Swiss 5 doesn't scale real well, and the bear pit doesn't. The round robin doesn't scale real well. But the rest of it, you can usually adapt something in here from 10 to even 100 fighters. So, but like I said, round robin and Swiss 5 are definitely what? Yeah, Nikkei's?
I've seen a cool thing where you split a large field into 4 or 6 person round robin pods, grab the top 1 or 2 fighters from each of those pods and then do a single elim or double elim of the final 16. So you can do a 50-person fight while using all your round robin skills.
Yeah, it becomes a little difficult to run more than 3 round robin tournaments at once, I've found, because I have run a plastic, a steel, and a heavy rapier round robin all at the same time, and it gives me a headache. I couldn't have done a 4th. So if you have the list mistresses or you're really, really good at keeping track of it, yes, you could.
I did that at Gulf War last year, and what I ended up doing is we had a marshal assigned to each pod, and I gave that marshal a card where they tracked their little pod, and then they brought them all back to
that's
me.
a good idea. That's a very good idea. Like I said, you need more than one list mistress, so that would make
the marshals helped me with that. And since it's just there were pods of either like 4 or 5, and pretty much you just send the fighters off and say, okay, guys, fight each other. Tell me who wins the most. And they can keep that track of that.
Now, we did a cut and thrust tournament down here where we did that too, where we did kind of a voting cut and thrust tournament where we said, okay, everybody, go fight everybody. Go fight everybody. There were 10 people or 15 fighters. When you're done, come back and tell me who you had the most fun fighting. And we decided everybody said this one person, so they won. You know, it was really, really easy to do. I thought I got the afternoon off. But yes, you do, if you're really, really organized, and I get distracted easily, especially since I mostly run for kids. I have run for adults, but I mostly run for kids. I try not to get it too complicated.
I have another tournament I've read about that I've not run, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, which is basically it's a full-scale winners and losers. Everyone keeps fighting, and everyone fights the first bracket, and then all the losers fight each other, and you end up with almost a not quite
the Atlantean Speed Tournament.
No, yeah, different than that. No, this is where you basically do a full bracket. Everyone keeps fighting, and it sort of almost gives you a full ranking of all of the fighters at the end.
Okay.
But everyone does about the same number of fights, but it only takes as long as a single elim tournament, because it all goes in parallel, assuming sufficient feeds.
Yeah.
I'll try and find the documentation because I want to share
Yeah,
that.
I want to continually add things to this so we keep a kind of a record of everything we can come up with.
We
actually do something like that in Artemisia at
Really?
Crown Tourney. Basically we have the master list, the pods, and when you lose in the pods, you go to the losers bracket, and you usually the winner of the losers bracket, depending on how big the tournament is, will earn their way back into the main tournament.
That's also possible, yeah. Now, there's a lot of cool things that you can do to increase the number of fights without increasing the length of the tournament.
Yeah.
And I was researching that, going, how do I make sure that everyone has lots of fights without having this monstrously long tournament?
Yes, the worst thing I can say for a 100-person Queens, we had a best 2 out of 3 double elim. And
Jesus, Mary and
Did you
Joseph,
run
that must have
one?
been 5 hours.
Who hated the list mistress that day?
I don't know. It started at 10, and we were still fighting at 6 or 7 o'clock.
Okay, Christiana's last one, we did 2 out of 3, and it took 3 of us running the list. And it was.
I think it was triple elimination too.
Triple? Okay, yeah. No, well, this last one is the best 2 out, a triple elimination list. And I think it was single elim on the fight. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't think it was best 2 out of 3.
It wasn't best 2 out of 3, but it was a triple elimination tournament, not a double elimination tournament. And yeah, that was brutal too.
Yeah, because most people don't realize that we run, if you're a winner, you go to the winner's pile, and loser, go to the loser's pile. most people don't know that that's how we get the tournament to go faster. And that made it very difficult because you can't have like winners, sort of losers, and really losers. I mean, I don't know how you would, I don't know how you guys kept that middle going, but I know there were three of you.
No loss, one loss, two loss pile.
Yeah, well, that
And-
first time through, I know would be hard.
Yeah, the first time through, you just split it like normal, but
Oh, okay.
eventually you get a 0 loss, 1 loss, 2 loss, and then
Yeah,
when they
you
have
will
their
eventually
third,
get
they're out of there.
Largest tournament I've ever seen. Well, I helped herald it. I headed up the heralding. Was Roses at Gulf 8 years ago. 164 fighters.
Yeah.
And we managed to push the entire list through. 2 out of 3 on a pass, otherwise single elim, kind of a mirror of the Crown tournament format.
Yeah,
I want to say 3 hours.
you can. And
We
one of
were
the nice
trucking.
things,
We did it.
one of the nice things about the Roses tournament is you have a lot of people from various kingdoms. So
Yeah.
they don't have as much intelligence on each other. So there's a lot of surprise fights. It's like, oh, I've never met, Master Bob, and God, he just one-shotted me, I mean, or, Cadet Ralph, oh, he just one-shotted. You just don't know what they're going to do. And that does help speed it along, but I'm sure you would have gotten through it in 4 or 5 if everybody was doing a Queens. It would have been fine. A 4 or 5 hour tournament at Queens is not unlikely, because that's usually the largest tournament we run in the entire kingdom, is Queens, on the on-store schedule. So.
Rose's tournament at Gulf War is longer usually. I want to say we were at 150-ish last year.
Yeah, I expect a war tournament to be larger. I'm just talking about the regular schedule outside of wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys. Well, anything else?
Can I please get a copy of your PowerPoint? I've never seen some of these tournaments, and I'd like to actually bring some excitement to my barony and Artemisia.
That is awesome. I know some great Artemisians. So I intend to post both the recording and the presentation. The presentation is designed to be a living document and a take-home. And those charts are nice and visual to say, here, Baron, here is how we're going to do it. There's little pictures. You won't get distracted. Because I've had some like that. Fortunately, the one we have right now is pretty uneasily distracted. But I have to say, when I ran tournaments for Robert from Stargate, we all know Robert. Robert gets easily distracted. We love Robert, but he knows. So pictures are good. All right, guys.
Large
so I will post this. Large
font.
font. I might blow the font up for him. So maybe change it to Comic Sans. Don't know. So he's fun to
Thank
pick
you
on.
so much. This was really awesome. I learned a ton.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad it was helpful.
So much.
All right, guys. Well, I look forward to the learning how to teach and some of the other classes you guys are doing. So get my learning on.
Woohoo.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you. You have a good day.
Everybody
Thank
have a
you.
good night.
You too.
Bye.